So we're now pretty close to finishing up the design of our hexapod. Just a few things to show you. In the last video we created the cover for our hexapod, and now in the timeline we've got a sculpt environment in the timeline, which if I right click on it and edit will take me back into that sculpt environment. Maybe I need to make a little bit of fine tuning to a couple of the surfaces, so maybe I just want to drag those a little closer together. Click on OK, click on Finish Form, and it now takes me back out having made that modification. So that's a really powerful thing to be able to do, to go back and modify this. Now, in creating this hexapod, we've not created a lot of the smaller components, so we need a lot of shafts to go through these holes to create the pivot points for the moving pivots that we've created. I'm sure you've seen in the video now how to model those, so you can put those in. We've not created all of the servo details, for instance. We've not created any real fixings between these parts. If you do need screws to be able to do that, once you've modeled features in to screw the parts together, don't model screws. You can actually go into the insert menu, choose Insert McMaster Car Component, and this basically brings up a catalogue of lots of hardware that you can choose from, screws and bolts. For instance, if I choose a socket head screw, I can choose metric. It will then give me a number of options for types of socket head screw I can choose. It then brings up a catalogue of screws, and if I click on any of these, so if I click on let's scroll down to something of a reasonable size, an M4 for instance, and it brings up this panel where the product detail is. If I scroll down, you can see a drawing of that screw, and then there's an option below that that says you can save that into your model and use the 3D step format to do that. So click on that and it will then import that screw into your model. You can see that screw there. So it's just brought that screw in from the McMaster Car component area and brought it into your assembly. So you can bring screws in to screw things together from McMaster Car. So that's one thing that you can do there. Another thing is I want to apply some branding to each one of these legs, and there's a way of doing that that's really powerful in Fusion 360. If I go into the leg subassembly, I want to put some branding on this face here, and I could create a sketch for that and then extrude that, but there's a quite quick, powerful way of actually putting a logo or that type of thing onto an object in Fusion 360. If I go to the insert menu, it's called Insert SVG, and SVG is a scalable vector graphic. It's a type of 2D graphic that comes out of certain 2D graphic software. If you don't have SVG capability, then you can take a JPEG, and if you search on the internet you'll find sites that will actually convert normal JPEGs, PNG, TIFF files into scalable vector graphics for you. So if I click on Insert Scalable Vector Graphic, I'm going to put it on that face, and I now need to go and find that scalable vector graphic. I've actually got a graphic which I've already prepared to put onto that face. This was a JPEG I created in Photoshop, and I've taken that through a converter to convert that into a scalable vector graphic. So I've got that stored on here. It's only a very small file, only a 2 kilobyte file. When I click on open, it brings that graphic in as effectively a sketch into Fusion 360. So I can scale that and move it into position. So just slightly smaller, I think. Drop that into position on that face there. Click on OK and then stop sketch. And that now acts just like a sketch. So I can now go in and do a create, extrude, and I can basically go in and pick, for instance, each of these letters and probably the hexagon that's outside it, and I'm going to push that into the model maybe by around 0.8 of a millimeter, just to create some engraving into the part. So I very quickly there put some branding on this particular leg. I can apply an appearance to that, and previously we've applied appearances by dragging them onto the whole body. if I click the radio button for faces, I can actually go in there and put a different finish on individual faces. So I can click on those faces at the bottom of the lettering and the bottom of the hexagon and just locally apply a different appearance to those areas. So that's now created the logo on that leg, and I've created a different appearance inside each of that depression. I'm now going to hit save to save that change, and now when I go back to the Hexapod assembly, I've got this warning again that I've got an out-of-date part because this isn't yet referencing that change I've made to add that branding. So now I can click on update that part, and what it's going to do now is fetch that latest version of the leg assembly and then import that and bring it into this final level of assembly of the Hexapod. So you can see there now it's actually put that branding on every one of those legs. So we're almost ready to go now. The last thing we're going to do is a rendering of this, and then one final mop-up of some features that we've not yet covered that you can just take a look around the model with.